In Houston have lost their court case over mandatory vaccinations. We've been following this case on this show. A district court judge sided with Houston Methodist Hospital. Nearly 200 workers have now been suspended for 2 weeks without pay and may lose their jobs because they have refused to get the COVID vaccine. Last night, I spoke with Dr. Mark Boom, the president and CEO of Houston Methodist.
These are incredibly safe vaccines. And at a hospital, in a healthcare situation where we deal with vulnerable people, think of people with cancer, people with immunological illnesses, and others who don't have good protection and who rely on everyone else for protection. That is our sacred obligation as healthcare workers to do that and to protect them. And that's what they've done. And ultimately, people like Ms. Bridges and others do have a choice. Their choice, if they don't want to be vaccinated, is not to be employed here and to seek employment elsewhere.
Nurse Jennifer Bridges is the lead plaintiff in this lawsuit. Jennifer, thank you so much for agreeing to join us again on this show. We talked to you before this court ruling. Now we're talking to you after this court ruling, this judge ruling in favor of the hospital. What's next for you and your coworkers who don't want to get this vaccine?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having us. No, we pretty much expected at this level that it would be dismissed and the judge would rule against us. But it's really only the beginning. We are going to be appealing this and taking this up. And ultimately, I very well feel this case is going to go up to the Supreme Court. So we're just starting things out at this moment.
So, as you well know, this judge was harshly critical of your argument, particularly the one that requiring vaccines violates the Nuremberg Code. He said likening the threat of termination in this case to forced medical experimentation during the Holocaust was, quote, reprehensible. What do you say to that? Do you still maintain that claim?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, of course, we're not going to say this is nearly as big as the Holocaust was, but at the beginning, the way they did make people have trials and injections, medications, procedures against their will, this is pretty much what they're doing right now. They're forcing people to take a shot when they don't want to, and they're not giving the proper informed consent. Like, nobody is being told the risk factors before getting this injection.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, though. I mean, you do realize that there is no comparison here to the Holocaust, right? I mean, the Nazi doctors held medical experiments on people and some died, I mean, it was painful, it was awful. How could you even compare it to that?
I didn't compare it to the Holocaust, but I did compare it to the beginnings of it, which is the Nuremberg trials, to where they did do medical procedures, injections, medications against people's wills, and they did not have a choice in the matter. And that's starting to be what happens now right over here in America, because people are not being properly informed about what's going into their bodies before they get it right now.
And as we know, there were clinical trials, thousands of people. It went through a whole process. The FDA has given it emergency authorization. So it went through many of the layers to make sure that this was safe before it went out for Americans to start getting the vaccine. Houston Methodist released a statement saying that it has exempted several hundred employees for religious or medical reasons and has deferred vaccines for some of its pregnant workers. Why is that not enough for you, especially when as Dr. Boom said with the Methodist, with the hospital system, that, look, you're treating patients who are highly vulnerable. Isn't there a higher standard here?
Well, there's a lot of things Methodist is not saying. They've actually denied about 70% of the religious and medical exemptions. So very much more got denied than actually approved. So those people are very upset. Their pastors, their doctors are upset that Methodist is going against their constitutional rights. And even with the patients, we're still protecting them. We wear the proper PPE. So there's nothing that we are going to contract to patients by not getting this vaccine.
And we'll have to circle back and fact check on the claim of denying people who are coming forward and saying they can't get the vaccine because of those purposes. But I have to ask you, is this more about legitimate medical concerns for you or politics?
Oh, this has absolutely nothing to do with politics. This is a medical concern. When I've seen people literally have miscarriages, blood clots, die, all sorts of horrible things after getting the shot, and they were perfectly healthy, this is a huge medical concern to me.
Okay, I actually, on that note, because there is no evidence connecting miscarriages to vaccines, and Dr. Al-Sayed, a doctor that came on CNN after our last interview, actually addressed this directly. We're going to play sound from him.
We know what the evidence has shown us. We know that among the tens of thousands of people who were enrolled in these studies, there was no greater risk of miscarriages among people who received the vaccination versus folks who received salt water. That'd be like saying that if it rained and somebody had a miscarriage, it was because of the rain. We know that that millions of people are getting vaccinated every single day around the world, and that miscarriages do happen. But to connect the two, you have to go back to the science. And the science shows us that there is no greater risk among people who've been vaccinated versus people who have not.
But Jennifer Bridges, look, I do appreciate you coming on because there are people across this country who are still vaccine hesitant and they share your concerns. And so it's really important, I think, to have you on the show to hear your thoughts, your opinions. Are you going to look for another job now? What are you going to do?
Oh, absolutely. I've already had 5 companies reach out to me wanting to employ me. So I'm going to go to my first interview tomorrow. And I understand what that physician's saying, but I have multiple physicians that would contest that with their own research they've done. And the thing with these adverse reactions is, yes, you can't 100% prove it was the shot, but you can't 100% prove it wasn't either. So if you are not aware of which way it goes, why not be on the safe side? Why take that risk when you don't have the proper research either way?
But we do know that there is a system in place. So if there are any adverse reactions, or there could be adverse reactions, they look at people who have had that and people who have been vaccinated and haven't been, compared to what they're seeing with, for example, miscarriages, and they try to figure out whether there's any connection. As of now, there is no definitive connection between the two, that the vaccine could anyway be related to a miscarriage, which sadly happens all the time. So just want to put that out there for our viewers. But Jennifer Bridges, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your perspective, and good luck with your interview tomorrow.
Thank you so much.